In these commentaries, I've been talking about the reliability of the texts of the Bible. And then we took a short hiatus because of the controversy surrounding the movie Noah, in which I accused the movie of dipping into all sorts of Gnostic ideas for their source material. Then we've been back to talking about the reliability of the texts of the Bible. And last time, I talked about the canon of Scripture. How do we know what books make up the Bible, the 66 books of the Bible? These two things coalesce and come together quite nicely because in the early centuries, there were other books floating around that could have vied for inclusion in the Bible, and they were written by groups of Gnostics. We didn't know a lot about the Gnostic Gospels until about the year 1945, when a group of farmers dug up in a gravesite in a place called Nag Hammadi, Egypt, a sealed jar, and inside that jar were 50-some texts, ancient texts of Gnostic spirituality. Books like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Peter, the Apocalypse of John, the Gospel of Truth, these sorts of Gnostic texts. And I thought it might help to say a few words about these Gnostic Gospels because there's a lot of confusion surrounding them. And I want to do that by illustrating it with a contemporary event. Just within the last year, Karen King, a scholar at Harvard University, unveiled a tiny fragment of papyrus that she had obtained that appears to be an ancient Gnostic text. She has called it the Gospel of Jesus' Wife. That is because the text on this ancient papyrus appears to have Jesus saying something about my wife. Well, as you can imagine, the media hysteria exploded around this revelation and discovery. Maybe Jesus had a wife. And reporters breathlessly asked Professor King, is this evidence that maybe Jesus was married? And even Professor King seemed a bit embarrassed at the question because of the ignorance that it reveals. No, this is not evidence that Jesus might have been married. What it is evidence, even if it's authentic, what it's evidence of is that a certain group, obscure group of people in Egypt, maybe a century or more after Jesus lived, may have thought that Jesus was married. Now, this is an important point because we need to realize that the Gnostic Gospels are not an authentic window into the historical events surrounding Jesus of Nazareth. They were written over a century, at the very earliest, over a century after Jesus. They were written by people who had no significant connection to Jesus. They didn't know him, didn't know his disciples. They were written in a geographical area, not in Palestine. These are not historical windows into what really took place. You see Dan Brown in the Da Vinci Code, and there's a whole group of people who want us to think that the Gospels we find in our Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are the official story. And the Gnostic Gospels, which have been buried in the sands for 1,800 years, are the real story, the authentic story. Well, that is scintillating stuff. That definitely tickles our conspiracy bone. Unfortunately, it's just simply not true. The Gnostic Gospels don't have any claim to historical authenticity. So that's a fundamental thing to understand and realize. The Gnostics exercised a mode of writing called pseudepigrapha. That is, they put the names of their Gospels as real disciples of Jesus. The Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary. They're putting their names on them as though Thomas and these various people are the authors. It's important to realize that Thomas was not the author of the Gospel of Thomas. This is a later compiler. And in order to give their documents gravitas or weight, they put the name of a recognizable disciple of Jesus on the top of it. So the Gnostic Gospels are ancient. but they're not ancient enough. They tell us a lot about history. They tell us what people might have believed a century or more after Jesus, but they're not historical enough, meaning they don't tell us anything about the real Jesus of Nazareth.